The throne room of the verdant spire shimmered with an otherworldly hush, its vaulted ceilings arching high above like the ribs of some ancient, slumbering leviathan. Sunlight, filtered through crystalline panels embedded in the dome, fractured into 1,000 emerald shards that danced across polished obsidian floors. At the room's heart, seated upon a throne carved from a single slab of living jade, was Queen Velara. Her skin was the deep, luminous green of forest canopies seen from orbit, and her long, silken hair, white as moonlit frost, cascaded over the gleaming plates of her ceremonial armor, which shimmered with veins of liquid gold. For 7 long solar cycles, her eyes had held the dull sheen of grief, ever since her only daughter, Princess Silria, vanished during a diplomatic envoy to the Outer Rim colonies. Now, as the great doors groaned open, a ripple of disbelief surged through the assembled courtiers, guards, and advisors. There, silhouetted against the blinding corridor light, stood Silria herself, older, wearier, her once bright eyes shadowed by years of unknown hardship, but unmistakably alive. And cradled gently in her arms, swaddled in a patchwork blanket stitched from starship insulation and desert moss, was a human child. Gasps echoed off the jade walls like startled birds. The child, a boy no older than 3, blinked up at the towering alien figures with wide, curious eyes the color of storm clouds. He sucked placidly on a thumb wrapped in a frayed scrap of synthcloth, utterly unfazed by the sea of green faces and gleaming armor. Silria's posture was rigid, her breath shallow, as if she expected spears to fly at any moment. Her white hair was matted with dust, her royal robes replaced by a traveler's tunic scorched at the hem and patched with alien textiles. Yet her grip on the boy never wavered. "Mother," she said, her voice cracking like dry riverbeds. "I have returned." Queen Velara rose slowly, the gold plates of her armor clicking softly with each movement. Her expression was unreadable, a mask forged from centuries of rule, but her hands trembled as they gripped the armrests of her throne. "Silria," she whispered, the name barely audible over the hum of the palace's atmospheric regulators, then louder with the full weight of her authority. "You vanished without word. You left your people in mourning. And now you return, with a human infant." The last words hung in the air like a challenge. Before Silria could answer, a sharp voice cut through the tension. "This is an outrage," bellowed Lord Zarnok, the High Minister of Defense. His green skin flushed with indignation. He stepped forward, his own armor clanking aggressively. "Humans are vermin, scavengers who strip mine dead worlds and poison living ones. To bring one into the royal palace is an insult to our ancestors." Several courtiers murmured in agreement, their eyes narrowed with suspicion. Silria's jaw tightened. "This child is not vermin, Zarnok," she snapped, her voice regaining some of its old fire. "His name is Finn, and he is the reason I survived." A murmur rippled through the chamber. Velara raised a single, imperious hand, and silence fell like a curtain. "Explain," she commanded, her tone softer now, laced with something almost like hope. Silria took a deep breath, her gaze never leaving her mother's. "After our ship was attacked by the Void Reavers near the Helix Nebula, I was the only survivor. My escape pod crash-landed on a desolate world called Kethra 7, a place humans call Ashfall. It's a graveyard of broken machines and forgotten wars. I was wounded, starving. I would have died within days if not for a human scavenger named Rourke." She paused, her eyes glistening. "He was rough, gruff, smelled like engine grease and burnt synth coffee. But he shared his last protein bar with me, taught me how to filter the toxic rain, showed me where the clean water pooled beneath the ruins. He had no reason to help an alien, especially not one from a species his people fear, but he did." She looked down at Finn, who had begun to fidget, reaching a chubby hand toward a floating light orb drifting near the throne. "Rourke had a son, Finn. His wife died in a raid years before I arrived. When the Reavers tracked my pod signal and descended on Ashfall, Rourke, he stayed behind to hold them off. Gave me time to escape with Finn." Her voice broke. "He died so we could live." A heavy silence settled over the throne room. Even Zarnok looked momentarily chastened. Velara stepped down from her throne, her golden armor catching the light like molten suns. She approached her daughter slowly, her eyes fixed on the child. Finn, sensing her presence, turned his head and let out a delighted gurgle. To everyone's astonishment, he reached out a tiny hand and patted the queen's armored forearm with a soft thump. Velara froze. Then, with infinite care, she knelt, something no reigning monarch of the verdant spire had done in centuries, and gently touched Finn's cheek with a single, claw-tipped finger. The boy giggled and tried to grab her finger, his tiny nails scraping harmlessly against her tough green skin. A strange, unfamiliar warmth bloomed in Velara's chest. "He is small," she murmured, almost to herself. "He's also surprisingly strong," Silria said with a tired smile. "Last week, he headbutted a sandrat twice his size for stealing his ration bar. Knocked it clean into a ravine." A few courtiers chuckled nervously. Even Zarnok's scowl softened by a fraction. But the moment of fragile peace shattered with the blare of alarm klaxons. Crimson lights pulsed along the ceiling, and the floor vibrated with the deep thrum of defensive shields powering up. A holographic projection flickered to life above the throne. A harried-looking communications officer. "Your Majesty, Void Reaver fleet detected at the edge of our system. They're broadcasting a message. They demand the return of the stolen prize. They say it belongs to their warlord, Cragthul." Silria's face went pale beneath her green skin. "They followed me," she breathed. "They must have tracked the pod's homing beacon." Velara rose swiftly, her expression hardening into the face of a warrior queen. "Cragthul thinks he can threaten the verdant spire?" she growled, her voice resonating with ancient fury. "Let him come. We have held this world since the stars were young. We will not yield to pirates and murderers." But Silria shook her head urgently. "Mother, you don't understand. It's not just Finn they want. During my time on Ashfall, I discovered something buried beneath the ruins. A device older than our civilization, older than theirs. Rourke called it the Heart of Ashfall. It's dormant now, but the Reavers believe it holds the power to control gravity wells across entire sectors. If Cragthul gets his hands on it, he won't just raid worlds. He'll collapse them into black holes." The court erupted into panicked whispers. Velara's eyes narrowed. "And you brought this knowledge and this child here knowing they would follow?" "I had no choice," Silria cried. "The heart is tied to Finn. Rourke said his wife was part of a human research team that studied it before the colony fell. She encoded its activation sequence into Finn's neural pathways when he was an infant. Some kind of biolock. Only he can wake it or destroy it." All eyes turned to the oblivious toddler, who was now attempting to chew on a loose thread of Silria's tunic. He let out a happy squeal, utterly unaware that galactic war might hinge on his tiny existence. Velara turned to her generals. "Prepare the Skyward Legions. Activate the orbital defense grid. And get the royal scientists to the archives. Find everything we have on Kethra 7 and this heart." Then, more quietly, to Silria, "You will stay here with the child. The palace is the safest place in the system." But Silria shook her head again. "No. Finn needs to be near the heart to deactivate it safely. And I'm the only one who knows where it's hidden on Ashfall. We have to go back." "Absolutely not," Velara said sharply. "You've only just returned. I will not lose you again." Before the argument could escalate, Finn suddenly stiffened in Silria's arms. His eyes rolled back, and a low hum emanated from his small body, a sound that made the very air vibrate. The floating light orbs in the chamber flickered wildly, and several courtiers stumbled as gravity seemed to wobble for a split second. "He's reacting to them," Silria whispered, her voice tight with fear. "They're close enough for him to sense the Reaver's ships. The heart is stirring." As if on cue, the palace shook violently. A distant explosion rocked the eastern wing, and the holographic display showed the first Reaver warships breaching the atmosphere. Hulking, jagged vessels bristling with plasma cannons, their hulls scarred with the sigils of 1,000 plundered worlds. Velara's decision was made in an instant. "Then we go together," she declared, her voice ringing with finality. "I will not send my daughter into danger alone. And if this child holds the key to stopping Cragthul, then he comes too." Chaos erupted as orders flew and guards scrambled. But amid the panic, a curious thing happened. Finn, still humming softly, reached out toward Queen Velara again. This time she didn't hesitate. She took his tiny hand in her own, her armored fingers surprisingly gentle. The hum softened, the gravity stabilized, and for the first time in 7 years, Velara felt something other than grief. A flicker of purpose, of protectiveness that extended beyond her own blood. As they raced through the palace corridors toward the royal hangar, alarms wailing and explosions booming in the distance, Silria kept glancing at her mother. She saw not just the queen, the indomitable ruler of 1,000 worlds, but the woman who had wept in private for years, who had kept Silria's childhood toys untouched in her chambers, who had refused to name a successor out of sheer, stubborn hope. And now, that same woman was strapping a plasma rifle to her back with one hand while cradling a human toddler with the other, muttering under her breath about impossible children and ridiculous rescue missions. When they reached the hangar, the royal gunship Starblossom awaited them, its engines already thrumming. But blocking the ramp was Lord Zarnok, flanked by a dozen of his elite guards. "You will not take the heir to the throne on a suicide mission, Your Majesty," he said, his voice firm but not unkind. "Leave the human child. Let the scientists extract what they need. It's the only logical choice." Velara stopped, her golden armor gleaming under the hangar lights. She looked from Zarnok to Silria, then down at Finn, who was now fast asleep against her armored chest. His tiny fingers curled around a fold of her cape. "Logic," she said slowly, "did not bring my daughter home. Compassion did. And if compassion is foolish, then let the galaxy call me a fool." She stepped forward, her presence so commanding that Zarnok's guards instinctively parted. "Stand aside, Zarnok, or I will have you reassigned to asteroid sanitation duty for the next century." Zarnok hesitated, then bowed his head. "As you command, Your Majesty." But as Velara passed him, he added quietly, "Just bring her back alive." Inside the Starblossom, Silria strapped Finn into a modified acceleration couch lined with soft cushions. The boy stirred but didn't wake, his face peaceful despite the chaos. Velara took the pilot's seat, her hands moving over the controls with practiced ease. "Hold on," she said grimly. "This is going to be bumpy." The gunship shot out of the hangar just as a Reaver torpedo slammed into the palace's western spire. Debris rained down as they broke through the cloud layer, weaving through the burning wreckage of Velari fighters and Reaver bombers. Velara flew like a woman possessed, her green fingers dancing over the controls, dodging plasma fire with maneuvers that would have made a stunt pilot weep. Silria clung to her seat, one hand on Finn's harness, the other gripping the armrest until her knuckles turned white. "They're hailing us," Velara said, her voice tight. On the view screen, the grotesque face of Kragthul appeared. A hulking brute with scarred purple skin, tusks jutting from his lower jaw, and eyes that burned with sadistic glee. "Queen Velara," he rumbled, his voice like grinding boulders. "You have something that belongs to me. Hand over the child and the girl, and I will let your world burn slowly. Resist, and I will crush it into dust before your eyes." Velara didn't flinch. "You will get nothing from me, Kragthul. Not while I draw breath." Kragthul laughed, a sound that made the ship's hull vibrate. "Then draw your last breath, little queen." The transmission cut out. "Hold tight," Velara yelled, yanking the controls hard to starboard. The Starblossom barrel rolled just as a volley of torpedoes screamed past, detonating in the upper atmosphere. The shockwave sent them spiraling, alarms blaring as hull integrity warnings flashed red. In the back, Finn woke with a startled cry. But instead of tears, he let out a sharp, high-pitched wail, and the Reaver ships around them suddenly lurched, their engines sputtering as if caught in an invisible tide. Gravity fluctuated wildly, sending one bomber crashing into another in a spectacular fireball. "He's doing it," Silria shouted over the din. "The heart. It's responding to his fear." Velara's eyes widened. "Can he control it?" "I don't know." Rourke said it was unstable, tied to his emotions. Another explosion rocked the ship, and a console sparked violently. Smoke filled the cockpit. "We're not going to make it to orbit," Velara growled. But then, through the smoke and chaos, a new voice crackled over the comms, calm, steady, and utterly unexpected. "Queen Velara, this is Captain Rourke of the Scrapjack. Heard you could use a hand." Silria's head snapped up. "Rourke? But he's dead." On the view screen, a battered, jury-rigged freighter dropped out of hyperspace directly above them, its hull patched with mismatched plating and its weapons arrays glowing ominously. And there, in the pilot's seat, was the grizzled human scavenger himself. Alive, grinning, and missing an ear. "Turns out Kragthul's goons aren't great shots," Rourke said with a wink. "Now hang on. I'm about to make this interesting." What followed was a masterclass in chaotic, improvisational warfare. Rourke's freighter unleashed a barrage of EMP mines and hacked drone swarms, sending the Reaver fleet into disarray. Velara seized the opportunity, punching the Starblossom's engines to maximum and diving toward the planet's surface. They skimmed over mountains and canyons, Reaver fighters in hot pursuit, until they reached the desolate wastes of the southern continent, where a hidden hangar, disguised as a rock formation, yawned open to receive them. Inside the underground bunker, the air was cool and still. Finn, exhausted from the ordeal, slept soundly in Silria's arms. Rourke limped over, his face grimy but his eyes bright. "Glad to see you made it, Princess. And you," he added, nodding to Velara. "Your Majesty." Velara studied him, her expression unreadable. "You let my daughter believe you were dead." Rourke shrugged. "Had to. Cragthal's spies are everywhere. If they thought I was alive, they'd never stop hunting Finn. Figured it was safer if even Silria thought I was gone." He looked at his son, his voice softening. "Besides, I knew she'd take better care of him than I ever could." Silria hugged Finn tighter, tears welling in her eyes. "You idiot," she whispered fondly. But there was no time for reunions. A technician, a young Velari scientist with nervous hands, rushed in. "Your Majesty, the Reavers have begun orbital bombardment. They're targeting the palace and the southern continent. They must know the heart is here." Velara's face hardened. "Then we don't have much time." She turned to Rourke. "Where is it?" Rourke nodded toward a sealed blast door at the far end of the bunker. "Deep below, in the old research lab. But there's a problem. The access tunnel is flooded with toxic gas. Only someone with a human respiratory system can survive long enough to reach the core chamber." Silria stepped forward. "I'll go. I've been exposed to Kethra 7's atmosphere before. My body's adapted." "No," Velara said firmly. "It's too dangerous. Mother, I'm the only one who knows the layout. And Finn. He'll need me to guide him through the activation sequence." Before Velara could argue further, Finn stirred again. This time, his eyes glowed faintly silver, and the ground beneath them trembled. Dust rained from the ceiling. "He's scared," Silria said urgently. "The bombardment, it's agitating the heart. If we don't stabilize it soon, it'll tear the planet apart from the inside." Velara looked from her daughter to the child, then to the sealed door that held the fate of worlds. She took a deep breath, the weight of centuries pressing on her shoulders. Then she placed a hand on Silria's cheek, her touch surprisingly gentle. "Then go," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "and may the stars light your path." As Silria and Rourke prepared to enter the tunnel, Velara turned to her guards. "Seal the bunker, and prepare the planetary defense cannons. If they breach the surface, we make our stand here." But even as she spoke, a new thought struck her. A memory from ancient texts, half forgotten. The heart of Ashfall wasn't just a weapon. It was a key, and keys could open doors as well as lock them. Outside, the sky burned with the fires of war. Inside, a green-skinned queen, a weary princess, a grizzled human, and a sleeping child stood at the edge of destiny. And somewhere deep below, an ancient machine hummed with power, waiting for a tiny hand to decide the fate of everything. The tunnel beyond the blast door exhaled a breath of stale, acrid air, thick with the scent of ozone and decay. Silria adjusted the respirator Rourke had hastily fitted over her face, its filters already hissing as they struggled against the toxic miasma. Behind her, Rourke carried Finn in a sling across his chest, the boy's silver-tinged eyes wide and unblinking, fixed on the darkness ahead as if he could see what lay buried beneath the rock. The walls of the passage were lined with the skeletal remains of old human machinery, rusted consoles, shattered data slates, and the ghostly outlines of emergency glyphs long faded by time. Every footstep echoed like a heartbeat in the suffocating silence. They hadn't gone far when the ground trembled again. Not from bombardment this time, but from something deeper, older. A low, resonant hum vibrated through the stone, making Silria's teeth ache. Finn whimpered, clutching Rourke's tunic tighter. "He's feeling it," Rourke muttered. "The heart's waking up faster than I thought." Before Silria could respond, a section of the tunnel ahead collapsed in a cloud of dust and debris. From the rubble emerged not rock, but figures, tall, emaciated. Their skin stretched taut over angular bones, eyes glowing faintly violet. They moved with unnatural grace, their limbs too long, their mouths lipless slits. Silria froze. "The Hallowed," she whispered. Rourke cursed under his breath. "I thought they were extinct." The Hallowed were the failed experiments of the original human research team on Kethra 7, scientists who tried to interface directly with the heart centuries ago. Instead of unlocking its power, it had hollowed them out, turning them into spectral guardians bound to the machine's will. They didn't speak. They didn't attack. They simply watched. One drifted forward, its skeletal hand outstretched toward Finn. The boy didn't cry. Instead, he reached back. "Don't let him touch them," Silria hissed, pulling Finn away just as Rourke stepped between them. But the moment Finn's tiny fingers brushed the hollowed's palm, the creature shuddered violently. Its violet eyes flared white, and it collapsed into dust, dissolving like ash in wind. The others recoiled, then bowed low to the ground. "What just happened?" Rourke asked, stunned. Silria stared at her son. Her son? The thought struck her like lightning. She'd carried him, fed him, fought for him, but she'd never allowed herself to claim him. Yet in that moment, watching the hollowed submit, she felt a truth settle in her bones. Finn wasn't just Rourke's child. He was hers too in every way that mattered. "The heart recognizes him," she said softly, "not just as a key, but as its heir." They pressed on, the hollowed parting before them like reeds in a river. At last, they reached the core chamber, a vast, spherical cavern lit by pulsing veins of bioluminescent crystal that snaked up the walls like roots. In the center hovered the heart of Ashfall, a sphere of obsidian and starlight, no larger than a human head, rotating slowly, silently. It emitted no sound, yet Silria could feel its presence in her marrow. A pressure, a question. Finn squirmed in Rourke's arms, pointing. "Go," he said, his voice clearer than it had ever been. "Go home." Rourke set him down gently. The boy toddled forward, unsteady but determined, until he stood before the heart. As his small hands touched its surface, the chamber erupted in light. Images flooded the air. Galaxies birthing and dying, civilizations rising and crumbling, wars fought over nothing and everything. And then, a voice, not spoken, but felt, echoed in their minds. "You are not the first to seek me, nor the last, but you are the first who comes not to wield, but to protect." Silria fell to her knees, overwhelmed. "We don't want to control you," she whispered. "We want to stop the Reavers from using you as a weapon." The heart pulsed. "The weapon is not me. The weapon is fear. And fear has already taken root in your skies." Above them, the bombardment intensified. The ceiling cracked, raining shards of crystal. Rourke grabbed Silria's arm. "We need to get him out of here, if this place collapses." But Finn wasn't listening. He placed both palms flat against the heart and closed his eyes. The silver glow returned, brighter this time, spreading up his arms like liquid light. The ground stilled. The tremors ceased. And high above, in orbit, every Reaver ship suddenly went dark. On the surface, Queen Velara stood atop the bunker's observation tower, plasma rifle in hand, watching as the enemy fleet froze mid-assault. Their engines died. Their weapons powered down. Even their comms fell silent. Then, one by one, the warships began to drift, pulled not by engines, but by an invisible current, toward the planet's upper atmosphere, where they burned up like falling stars. A cheer rose from the Velari defenders. But Velara didn't join it. Her eyes narrowed. Something was wrong. Too easy. Back in the core chamber, Finn collapsed. Silria caught him just before he hit the ground. His skin was cold, his breathing shallow. "Finn, wake up!" she cried, panic clawing at her throat. The heart's voice returned, softer now. "He has anchored me, but the anchor is fragile. To hold me stable, he must remain near. To remove him is to unleash chaos." Rourke knelt beside them, his face ashen. "So he's trapped here? Forever?" "Not forever," the heart replied, "but until another worthy vessel is prepared. The bond must be transferred willingly, and with love." Silria looked at Rourke, then at Finn, then at the distant memory of her mother's face. Proud, grieving, waiting. She made her choice. "We'll stay," she said. But before Rourke could respond, the chamber entrance exploded inward. Not from bombardment, from within. A figure strode through the smoke, clad in scorched gold armor. One pauldron shattered, her white hair streaked with soot. Queen Velara. "Mother!" Silria gasped. Velara's eyes swept the chamber, taking in the heart, the hollowed, the exhausted humans, and Finn, pale and still in Silria's arms. "I felt the shift in gravity," she said. "The Reavers are gone. But so is the sky's light. What have you done?" Silria explained quickly the bond, the anchor, the price. Velara listened in silence, her expression unreadable. Then she knelt beside Finn and placed a hand on his forehead. Her touch lingered. "He saved us," she murmured. "All of us." Rourke cleared his throat. "There's another way, Your Majesty." The heart said the bond can be transferred. "If someone else, someone strong enough, volunteers." Velara looked up sharply. "You're suggesting I take his place?" "No," Rourke said. "But maybe someone who already carries the weight of a world on her shoulders wouldn't mind carrying one more burden." Silria's breath caught. "Mother, no. You can't." "Why not?" Velara asked, a ghost of a smile touching her lips. "I ruled for centuries believing my daughter was dead. Now she's returned with a child who saved our world. If staying here means they can live, then it is a small price." Before anyone could argue, she rose and approached the heart. "I offer myself," she declared, her voice ringing with regal certainty. "Not as a queen, not as a warrior, but as a grandmother." The heart pulsed once, slowly. Then a tendril of silver light extended from its surface and touched Velara's chest. She gasped but didn't flinch. The light spread through her, turning her green skin momentarily translucent, revealing the golden lattice of her armor fused with her very bones. Her white hair lifted as if in zero gravity, and her eyes glowed with the same silver fire that had filled Finn's. Finn stirred. His breathing deepened. Color returned to his cheeks. He opened his eyes, storm gray once more, and let out a soft sigh. The transfer was complete. But as Velara turned to embrace her daughter, a new alarm blared, not from the surface, but from the heart itself. A warning, a memory. Projected in the air before them was an image. Not of Cragthul, but of a sleek, obsidian vessel emerging from the void beyond the Reaver fleet's wreckage. Its design was unfamiliar, sleek, silent, bearing no insignia. And at its helm, a figure cloaked in black with eyes like dying stars. "They have come," the heart whispered. "The Keepers. They do not seek to wield me. They seek to silence me forever." Rourke paled. "The Keepers? I thought they were a myth. A ghost story told to scare scavengers." "They're real," Velara said grimly. "Ancient. Older than our empire. They believe sentient life is a cosmic mistake. And artifacts like the heart are errors that must be erased." Silria clutched Finn tighter. "Then we can't stay here. They'll find us." "We don't have to hide," Velara said, her voice steady despite the silver light still flickering beneath her skin. "We have the heart. And now, we have each other." Above, the obsidian ship descended through the atmosphere, silent as a shadow. Its weapons weren't plasma or torpedoes, they were null fields, designed to unravel matter at the quantum level. One touch, and entire cities would cease to exist, not in fire, but in forgetting. But deep beneath the surface, in a chamber older than time, a green-skinned queen with white hair and golden armor stood between that darkness and the light. Beside her, a human scavenger checked the charge on his jury-rigged pulse rifle. And in Silria's arms, a child who had already saved the world once blinked up at the glowing ceiling, reached out a hand, and whispered, "Again!" The heart pulsed in answer, not with fear, but with defiance. And far above, the first null beam lanced down toward the planet's surface, only to dissolve into harmless mist as an invisible shield, woven from starlight, love, and the will of a grandmother, rose to meet it. The obsidian ship hung in the sky like a shard of night given form, its null beams flickering uselessly against the shimmering dome of energy that now enveloped the southern continent. Within the heart's chamber, Velara stood tall, her golden armor humming in resonance with the ancient artifact behind her. The silver light beneath her skin had steadied into a gentle pulse, no longer a strain, but a symbiosis. She was no longer just queen of the verdant spire. She had become something more, a guardian, a bridge between worlds, a living anchor for a power older than stars. Above, the Keeper's vessel shifted tactics. Instead of firing, it began to descend, slowly, deliberately, toward the planet's surface. A single hatch opened on its underbelly, and a slender figure emerged, floating on anti-grav fields. Cloaked in flowing black fabric that seemed to drink the light, the Keeper landed lightly on the cracked earth just outside the bunker entrance. Their face was hidden, but their presence radiated cold certainty. The calm of one who has erased countless civilizations and felt no remorse. Velara stepped out to meet them, Silria and Rourke flanking her. Finn cradled protectively in his mother's arms. The air crackled with tension, but also with something new. Hope. "You cannot shield this anomaly forever," the Keeper said. their voice genderless, toneless, echoing as if from a great distance. It disrupts the balance. It invites chaos. It must be unmade. And who decides what is chaos? Velara countered, her voice calm but firm. You? From your silent ship, judging life you refuse to understand? This anomaly saved my world. It gave my daughter back to me. It gave a human child a future. If that is chaos, then I welcome it. The keeper tilted their head, as if considering. Sentience breeds suffering. You wage wars. You destroy your homes. You fear what you do not know. The heart amplifies that fear. It is a flaw in the design of existence. Then maybe existence needs a flaw, Rourke said gruffly, stepping forward. Maybe it's the messy, stubborn, ridiculous parts. The parts that make a queen risk everything for a child not her own, or a scavenger fake his death to protect a baby, that make life worth keeping. Finn, sensing the shift in mood, wriggled free from Silria's arms and toddled toward the keeper. Everyone tensed. But the boy simply stopped a few feet away, looked up and held out his hand. In his palm glowed a tiny, perfect replica of the heart, no bigger than a pebble, pulsing with soft silver light. The keeper froze. For the first time, their composure cracked. A tremor ran through their cloak. Impossible, they whispered. The heart does not create. It doesn't, Silria said gently. It reflects. And Finn, he chose to show you what it sees in you. Slowly, hesitantly, the keeper reached out. As their gloved fingers brushed Finn's palm, the miniature heart dissolved into a shower of light that wrapped around them like a memory. Images flooded their mind, not of war or ruin, but of quiet moments. A mother singing to her child on a distant moon, a gardener tending alien flowers under twin suns, a soldier laying down their weapon to share water with an enemy. Moments of connection, of grace. The keeper staggered back, their hood falling away to reveal a face neither young nor old, neither human nor alien, but undeniably alive. Tears, clear and luminous, traced paths down their cheeks. We forgot, they murmured. We were tasked with pruning the garden, but we forgot to tend it. Velara approached and placed a hand on their shoulder. Then tend it with us. The keeper nodded slowly. With a gesture, their ship powered down completely, its dark hull blooming with soft, bioluminescent patterns. Like stars waking after a long night, they turned to the heart's chamber. The artifact is not a weapon. It is a seed, and seeds are meant to grow. In the days that followed, the world began to heal. The verdant spire, though scarred by Reaver fire, stood proud once more. Refugees returned. Gardens were replanted. And in the southern continent, a new sanctuary rose, not a fortress, but a place of learning, where Velari scholars, human engineers, and even a few reformed hollowed worked together to understand the heart not as a tool, but as a teacher. Velara remained its guardian, but she was no longer bound to the chamber. The bond had changed. Finn, now thriving and full of mischief, once headbutting a palace guard who tried to take his toy, another time teaching the royal garden drones to dance, had unknowingly unlocked a new harmony. The heart no longer needed a single anchor. It needed a family. Silria and Rourke built a home near the sanctuary, a modest dwelling with a rooftop garden that overlooked the crystal plains. She still wore her royal insignia, but more often than not, it was smudged with dirt from playing with Finn or tinkering with Rourke's endless pile of salvage tech. He, in turn, had traded scavenging for teaching, showing young Velari how to repair old human machines, and how to laugh at themselves when things inevitably went wrong. One evening, as the twin moons rose over the horizon, Velara joined them on the rooftop. Finn, now 4, ran to her immediately, climbing onto her lap with the ease of a child who had never known fear in her presence. "Grandma," he said seriously, holding up a dented toy starship. "Can you fix Blinky?" he said. Velara smiled, her green skin glowing softly in the moonlight, her white hair catching the breeze like spun silver. She took the toy, touched it gently, and with a soft chime, its lights flickered back to life. Finn cheered, hugging her tightly. Below them, the sanctuary hummed with quiet activity. The keeper, now known as Alara, walked among the scholars, their once black robes now woven with threads of gold and green. They had chosen to stay, not as an enforcer of silence, but as a student of song. Peace had not come through conquest, nor through the absence of danger, but through the stubborn, ridiculous, beautiful choice to care for one another, even across species, even across stars. And as Finn drifted to sleep in her arms, whispering dreams of flying ships and talking stars, Queen Valara looked out over the world she had saved, not with weapons, but with love, and knew, at last, that her daughter had not just returned. She had brought home the future,